I'm Meredith Norris, 25 years old, stuck serving coffee at the bean counter in Eugene, Oregon, still living in my parents' house. That night, Mom called her voice, cold dinner, be home by 7. My gut churned. Family dinners were never just meals, they were ambushes. I drove to their wooden house, bracing for the usual jabs about my dead-end job and abandoned college degree. I'd been coding late nights chasing a tech startup dream, but to them, I was nothing next to my lawyer brother. At the table, tension crackled. Then Mom stood up, eyes like daggers, and said, "You're 25, still living in our house, no career, you're a failure." My brother leaned in, sneering, "It's embarrassing that you're my sibling." Their words burned, but I didn't argue. I just nodded, heart pounding, and went to my room. By midnight, I'd packed my bags and slipped out the back door, leaving their judgment behind. 6 months later, my startup made $5 million, and they came crawling, demanding half. I just smiled, ready to hit back with a truth they weren't prepared for. What happened at that dinner and what I did next changed everything. Ever been called a failure by your own family? Share your story in the comments. Smash that subscribe button to see how I turned their words into my victory. Don't miss what's coming. It's a wild ride. The smell of Mom's pot roast filled the house as I braced for the evening. Walking into my parents' wooden home in Eugene, Oregon, I felt the weight of years spent under their roof, each step pulling me back to a past I couldn't shake. At 25, I was still here, sleeping in my childhood bedroom surrounded by posters from high school. I'd dropped out of college 3 years ago, halfway through a finance degree I never wanted. The numbers, the pressure, the endless exams, it crushed me. I'd sit in lectures, heart-racing, palms sweaty, feeling like I was drowning. My advisor, Professor Ellis, tried to help, but I couldn't keep up. So I quit trading textbooks for a barista apron at the bean counter. The pay was barely enough to cover gas, but it was honest work, and I liked the rhythm of steaming milk and chatting with regulars like Karen, who tipped extra for my latte art. But my real passion was coding. Late at night, when the house was quiet, I'd hunch over my laptop building an app I dreamed would change everything. It was a fintech tool, something to simplify budgeting for people like me who'd never fit the mold of success. I taught myself Python from YouTube tutorials, piecing together lines of code between shifts. Every time I hit run and saw my app take shape, I felt alive, like I was building a ladder out of this life. But my family didn't see it. To them, I was a dropout, a letdown, coasting on their dime, while my brother Zachary shone brighter than ever. Zachary was their pride, the lawyer who'd made it big in Portland. At 30, he had a corner office, a fancy car, and a wife, Tiffany, who hosted charity galas. Every family gathering, my parents, Mom and Dad, would rave about his latest case or his new condo. "Why can't you be more like Zachary?" Mom would sigh, her voice sharp with disappointment. Dad would nod, adding, "You need to get your act together, Meredith." Their words stung, but I swallowed them, nodding like I always did. I'd heard it all before, at Christmas, at birthdays, at every tense dinner where I felt like the odd one out. They didn't know about the app, the hours I poured into it, the dream I clung to despite their doubts. I kept it secret, afraid they'd laugh or call it another waste of time. I wasn't always like this. In high school, I'd been the one with big plans. I wanted to build something, not just follow someone else's path. I'd spend hours in the computer lab messing around with basic HTML, dreaming of Silicon Valley. But college broke me. The pressure to be perfect, to match Zachary's grades, to make Mom and Dad proud, it was too much. I started having panic attacks, hiding in my dorm to avoid classes. When I dropped out, Mom cried, not out of sadness, but anger. "You're throwing your life away," she said. Dad just shook his head like I'd failed some test I didn't know I was taking. Moving back home was supposed to be temporary, but 3 years later I was still here, saving every penny for a future they couldn't see. That night, as I set the table, I thought about my app. I'd just fixed a bug in the code, a small victory that kept me going. I imagined pitching it to investors, seeing it on people's phones, proving I wasn't the failure they thought. But sitting there with the clink of forks and the smell of pot roast, I felt the familiar dread creep in. I knew this dinner wouldn't be about catching up. It was another chance for them to remind me who I wasn't. Still, I held on to my dream, a quiet fire in my chest. No matter what they said tonight, I wouldn't let go of it. I'd keep coding, keep building, keep believing I could be more. The dining room table was set with her best china, but the air in the home was thick with tension. I sat across from my parents, my brother, and his wife, picking at the pot roast, my appetite gone. Every clink of silverware felt like a countdown to something ugly. I'd barely said a word when Mom stood up her chair, scraping the hardwood floor. Her eyes locked on me, cold and unyielding. "Meredith Norris, you're 25, still living in our house. No career, you're a failure," she declared, her voice slicing through the room. I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth, the words hitting like a slap. I'd heard their disappointment before, but this was different. Public raw meant to wound. Zachary leaned back, his lips curling into a smug grin. "She's right, you know," he said, glancing at his wife. Tiffany nodded, her perfectly manicured nails tapping her wine glass. "We posted about it on Facebook," she said, her tone dripping with mockery. "A picture of you at that coffee shop, apron and all. Captioned it, 'This is what failure looks like.' Got a ton of likes already." My heart sank. I pictured the photo, me wiping down a table at the bean counter, unaware they'd snapped it during a visit last week. The humiliation burned, knowing their friends, our neighbors, were laughing at me online. I opened my mouth to protest, but Zachary cut in. "What you're gonna say, you're finding yourself," he scoffed. "Gimme a break." Dad cleared his throat, his voice gruff. "Meredith, it's time you got a real job," he said, folding his arms. "Something respectable like your brother. Or you can find somewhere else to live." His ultimatum landed like a brick. I tried to explain, my voice shaky. "I'm working on something, Dad. I've been building an app. It's..." Tiffany laughed, cutting me off. "An app? Oh, please, Meredith. You're not some tech genius. Stick to pouring coffee." Her words stung, but what hurt more was Mom's silence, her nod of agreement. I looked around the table, searching for a hint of support, but found none. They were a united front, tearing me down together. I clenched my fists under the table, my nails digging into my palms. I wanted to scream, to tell them about the nights I spent coding the app that was so close to being something real. But their smug faces stopped me. They wouldn't understand, they never had. I thought about the Facebook post, how it would spread through our small town, how people at the cafe might whisper behind my back. The shame was suffocating, but so was the anger. I wasn't just their punching bag anymore. Then Zachary leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with contempt. "It's embarrassing that you're my sibling," he said, his voice low and venomous, a smirk twisting his face. The room seemed to shrink, their faces blurring as his words echoed in my head. I was alone, cornered, my dreams reduced to a punchline. After dinner, I found my laptop open on the kitchen counter. I'd left it in my room, password protected, before sitting down to that miserable meal. My pulse quickened as I tapped the trackpad, waking the screen to my messaging app, open to a thread with Brooke Lane, my best friend since high school. We'd been texting about my fintech app ideas for the user interface, a pitch I was drafting for a local startup contest. The chat was scrolled up to messages from last week, ones I hadn't opened in days. Someone had been digging through my private conversations. I clicked through my files, my stomach churning. My coding folder labeled Project Freedom was a mess. 2 key scripts, months of work on the app's budgeting algorithm, were gone, deleted. My backups were on a USB drive safe in my bag, but the loss hit hard. Those scripts were my late-night victories, proof I could build something real. I heard footsteps and turned to see Zachary and Tiffany strolling into the kitchen, coffee mugs in hand. Tiffany's lips twitched into a smirk. "Oh, Meredith, still playing with your little computer games?" she said, her voice syrupy with condescension. "That app thing you're working on? It's delusional. You're not cut out for that tech nonsense." I gripped the counter, my voice tight. You went through my laptop? I said, staring at Zachary. He shrugged, leaning against the fridge. We were curious, he said, as if it were nothing. You leave it lying around. What do you expect? My mind raced back to earlier that week. They'd stopped by my room supposedly to chat while I was grabbing water. They must have snooped then, bypassing my password somehow. I felt exposed, like they'd ripped open my diary. You deleted my code? I said, my voice rising. Tiffany laughed, tossing her hair. Oh, come on, it's not like it was anything important. You're wasting your time with that pipe dream. I stormed to the living room where Mom and Dad were clearing dishes. Did you know about this? I demanded, my hands shaking. Mom set down a plate, her expression calm but stern. Meredith, we're worried about you, she said. You're chasing fantasies instead of growing up. Zachary was just trying to show you what's realistic. Dad nodded, his arms crossed. You need to focus on a real job, not this hobby, he said. I couldn't believe it, they were defending them. I turned to Zachary, who'd followed me, and Tiffany at his side. You had no right, I said, my voice cracking. Those files were mine. My work. My future. Tiffany rolled her eyes. Future, Meredith, be serious. You're 25, slinging coffee, living off Mom and Dad. That app isn't going anywhere. Her words echoed their earlier insults, but this was worse. They'd violated my privacy, erased my progress, and called it help. I looked at Mom, hoping for a shred of support, but she just sighed. We want what's best for you, she said, as if that justified everything. Zachary chimed in, his tone patronizing. You should thank us for snapping you out of it, he said. You're not some startup hotshot. Stick to what you're good at. I felt the room spin, their words piling on like weights. I'd spent years hiding my dream, protecting it from their judgment, and now they'd torn it apart. I thought about the hours I'd poured into that code, the moments of pride when a feature worked, the hope it gave me. They didn't just delete files, they tried to delete my ambition. You don't get to decide what I'm capable of, I said, my voice steady, despite the tears burning my eyes. I faced them all. Mom, Dad, Zachary, Tiffany. You crossed a line. You went into my private messages, my work, and destroyed it. Why? Mom's face hardened. We're your family, she said. We have a right to know what you're doing under our roof. Dad added. You're not acting like an adult, Meredith. We're trying to guide you. Guide me. This wasn't guidance. It was control. They wanted me small, dependent, a shadow of Zachary's success. I saw it clearly now. Their concern was a leash. Not love. My chest tightened with betrayal. Not just from the invasion, but from their refusal to see me as anything more than a failure. I wasn't just angry. I was done letting them define me. By midnight, my bags were packed. I stood in my childhood bedroom, the weight of the night pressing down on me. The posters on the walls, the creaky bed, the desk where I'd coded my dreams, they all felt like relics of a life I was done with. I moved quietly, stuffing clothes into a duffel bag, my hands steady despite the ache in my chest. My laptop, still warm from earlier, went into its case, along with the USB drive holding my app's backups. Those files were my lifeline, the only thing they hadn't taken from me. I wasn't just leaving a house. I was breaking free from years of control, from a family that saw me as less than I was. I grabbed my phone and texted Brooke Lane, my best friend since high school, who'd always believed in me. Can you come get me? Now I typed, my fingers shaking. Her reply was instant: on my way. Hang in there. Brooke had her own place in Eugene, a tiny apartment she'd turned into a haven for her graphic design work. She'd offered me a spot on her couch before, but I'd always hesitated, thinking I could endure my family's judgment. Not anymore. Their betrayal, snooping through my messages, deleting my code, had snapped something inside me. I wasn't staying another night under their roof. I zipped my bag and slipped downstairs, careful not to wake anyone. The house was dark, the kitchen still smelling faintly of pot roast. I paused, considering whether to just walk out. but something in me needed closure, a final word to mark the end of this chapter. I found Mom and Dad in the living room, sitting on the couch, the TV flickering with some late-night show. Zachary and Tiffany were in the kitchen, their voices low, probably gloating over their intervention. I cleared my throat, my bag slung over my shoulder. "I'm leaving," I said, my voice calm but firm. Mom looked up, her brow furrowing. "What are you talking about, Meredith?" she asked as if I were joking. Dad stood, his face hardening. "You're not going anywhere," he said. "You can't just walk out in the middle of the night." I met his gaze, unyielding. "I'm done living under your rules," I said, the words spilling out with a strength I didn't know I had. "You don't respect me, my work, or my life. I'm not your project to fix." Mom's eyes widened, but she didn't speak. Zachary stepped into the room, Tiffany trailing behind, her arms crossed. "You're being dramatic," Zachary said, rolling his eyes. "Where are you even going to go? You can't afford to live on your own." I ignored him, turning to Dad. "I'll figure it out," I said. "I don't need your money anymore." His face reddened. "If you walk out that door, don't expect us to keep paying your bills," he warned, his voice low and threatening. "You'll be cut off, Meredith. No more free ride." I almost laughed. A free ride I'd been scraping by on tips, saving every cent for my app while they treated me like a burden. "Fine," I said, my voice steady. "Cut me off. I don't want your help if it comes with strings." Tiffany scoffed, muttering something about me being ungrateful, but I didn't care. I looked at them one last time, Mom silent and tense, Dad glaring like I'd betrayed him, Zachary and Tiffany smug as ever. "Goodbye," I said, the word final, like closing a book. I turned and walked to the front door, my heart pounding, but my steps sure. Outside, Brooke's old Honda idled in the driveway, the headlights cutting through the Oregon night. I slid into the passenger seat, tossing my bag in the back. "You okay?" Brooke asked, her voice soft but steady. I nodded, clutching my laptop case. "I will be," I said, feeling the truth of it settle in. As Brooke drove away, the wooden house faded in the rearview mirror, its windows dark and uninviting. I thought about my app, the lines of code I'd saved, the dream I'd fought for despite their doubts. I wasn't just leaving a house, I was choosing myself. For the first time in years, I felt free, like I could breathe. My future was mine, not theirs, and I'd build it on my terms, no matter what it took. Brooke's spare room became my new base for coding late into the night. Her tiny apartment in Eugene, Oregon was cramped, but warm, with mismatched furniture and walls covered in her graphic design sketches. I set up a folding table for my laptop, the hum of the machine my only company as I rebuilt what my family had tried to destroy. The first week was a blur of settling in, unpacking my duffel bag, buying a cheap air mattress, and adjusting to the rhythm of a life I controlled. Brooke didn't ask for rent, just a promise to split takeout costs and keep the place tidy. Her trust in me felt like a lifeline, a reminder that someone saw my potential. I kept my job at the bean counter, pulling double shifts to cover expenses. The cafe was my anchor, its bustle of customers and hiss of espresso machines grounding me. There, I met Connor Reed, a barista who doubled as a freelance coder. He was 27, with a quiet intensity and a knack for debugging that rivaled my own. During a slow afternoon, we got talking about tech over a stack of dirty mugs. "You're working on a fintech app?" he asked, raising an eyebrow when I mentioned my project. "That's bold. Most people here just dream about it." I showed him a demo on my phone, and his eyes lit up. "This could be huge," he said. "Mind if I take a look at the code?" That conversation sparked a partnership. Connor and I started meeting after hours, crowding around my laptop in Brooke's living room. Our app, now called Budget Blocks, was designed to help people like us, young, broke, and overwhelmed, manage money with simple, intuitive tools. Connor brought ideas for machine learning integration, suggesting we add predictive budgeting features based on user spending patterns. We split the work. I focused on the core algorithms while he refined the back-end and user interface. Most nights we coded until dawn, fueled by energy drinks and Brooke's leftover pizza. Her encouragement kept us going. She'd peek in, offer feedback on the app's design, and call us nerds with a grin. To make budget blocks viable, I knew I needed more than coding skills. I enrolled in an online financial management course, squeezing lessons into my breaks at the cafe. The irony wasn't lost on me studying finance after dropping out of a finance degree, but this time it was on my terms. I learned about cash flow investments and budgeting frameworks, applying them to our app's features. Connor pushed me to improve my coding too, recommending advanced Python libraries and cleaner ways to structure my scripts. Slowly, I felt my confidence grow. I wasn't just a dropout anymore. I was a developer with a vision, building something that could change lives. 3 months in, we had a working prototype. Connor pitched it to a local tech meetup, and I presented alongside him, my nerves jangling but my voice steady. The feedback was electric. Entrepreneurs and developers loved the app's simplicity and AI-driven insights. One attendee, a scout from Cascade Tech, a Portland-based startup accelerator, asked for a private demo. We spent weeks polishing budget blocks, fixing bugs, and practicing our pitch. When we met the Cascade Tech team, I laid out our vision: an app that empowered anyone to take control of their finances, no matter their background. Connor backed me up, walking them through the technical specs. They were impressed, but I wasn't prepared for what came next. 2 weeks later, an email landed in my inbox. Cascade Tech offered us a contract, $5 million, to license budget blocks for their platform, with potential for more if it scaled. I stared at the number, my heart racing. This wasn't just money, it was validation, proof that my dream wasn't delusional. Connor and I met at the cafe to review the contract, our hands shaking as we read the terms. We'd split the money evenly, but more than that, we'd built something real together. That night in Brooke's spare room, I signed the contract digitally, my signature, a quiet declaration of victory. As the confirmation email pinged, I leaned back, a smile breaking across my face. I'd done it against all odds. I'd turned my code into a future. 6 months later, my phone lit up with Zachary's desperate text. Our app had made headlines in the local paper after Cascade Tech announced their $5 million licensing deal. The article called me Meredith Norris, a rising star in fintech, and I'd saved a clipping, proof of a victory I'd earned on my own. But Zachary's message shattered the calm. We need to talk about the money. Family deserves a share. I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting. They hadn't contacted me since I left, and now they wanted a piece of my success. I opened my laptop and saw a missed call from Tiffany Norris, Zachary's wife. Her voicemail was syrupy, dripping with fake warmth. "Meredith, we're so proud of you," she said, pausing for effect. "But let's be fair. We supported you for years, rent, food, everything. You owe us at least half." Half? I nearly laughed. They'd never believed in my app, never paid a dime for my coding courses or late-night energy drinks. I'd built budget blocks from nothing, scraping by on tips from the bean counter. Their claim was absurd, but it wasn't surprising. This was the same family that had mocked me, deleted my code, and told me I'd never amount to anything. Curious, I checked Facebook, something I'd avoided since their humiliating post about me. Sure enough, Tiffany had been busy. A new post on her profile read, "Some people forget who got them where they are. Family sacrifices everything, and now Meredith thinks she's too good for us." Comments from their friends piled on, calling me ungrateful, selfish, a sellout. My blood boiled. They were spinning a lie, painting themselves as victims to justify their greed. I recognized the tactic twist. The truth rally, support, pressure me into giving in. But I wasn't the same person who'd sat silently at their dinner table. I called Zachary back, my voice steady. "You're not getting anything," I said before he could speak. He sputtered, launching into a rehearsed speech about how Mom and Dad had invested in me by letting me live at home. "You were a freeloader," he said, his tone sharp. "We carried you. That money's partly ours." I cut him off. "You carried me. You ridiculed me. Trashed my work, told everyone I was a failure. I built this on my own. Tiffany jumped in, her voice shrill through the speaker. Don't be so selfish, Meredith. We're family. We deserve our cut. I gripped my phone, their entitlement fueling my resolve. I thought about the years I'd spent under their roof, shrinking under their judgment. Every penny I'd earned, every line of code I'd written, every sleepless night, they had no part in it. You don't get a cent of what I built, I said, my voice cold and final. You don't get to claim my work now that it's worth something. Zachary tried to interrupt, but I kept going. And those lies you're spreading online? They're pathetic. I'm done with your games. I hung up, my heart pounding, but my mind clear. Their words couldn't touch me anymore. I'd fought too hard, built too much to let them drag me back. Sitting in Brooke's apartment, surrounded by my laptop and notes, I felt a surge of strength. I wasn't just protecting my money, I was guarding my independence, my right to define my own story. I blocked their numbers, unfriended them online, and started drafting an email to a lawyer about safeguarding my assets. This wasn't just about saying no. It was about closing the door on a family that had never valued me. I was ready to cut them out for good, to move forward without their shadow. At my new office overlooking Eugene's skyline, I read Zachary's final message. His text was a last-ditch plea sent from a new number. Meredith, let's talk. Family sticks together. I didn't hesitate. I blocked the number, then opened my laptop and unfollowed every Norris family member on social media. Zachary, Tiffany, Mom, Dad. My finger lingered over the screen, but I felt no regret. Cutting them off wasn't just about silence. It was about reclaiming my peace. Their voices, their judgments had no place in the life I'd built. I'd moved out of Brooke's apartment into a small rental near downtown, paid for with my share of the Budget Blocks deal. My days were spent in a sleek office space leased by Cascade Tech, where I worked alongside Connor Reed, refining our app's features. Brooke often dropped by, her design sketches adding flair to our user interface. Their support felt like a chosen family, steady and real, unlike the one I'd left behind. I was no longer the barista scraping by. I was a developer, a partner in a thriving startup, my confidence rooted in hard-won skills. The bean counter was a memory now replaced by meetings with investors and late-night coding sessions with Connor over takeout. Word of my family's behavior had spread through Eugene's tight-knit community. Zachary's law firm lost a major client after whispers of his greed reached their boardroom. A colleague had seen his Facebook posts twisting my success into a family sob story, and it backfired. Clients didn't trust a lawyer who aired dirty laundry online. Tiffany, once a fixture in local high society, found herself snubbed. Her usual invitations to galas and charity events dried up, her friends distancing themselves from her petty rumors. Mom and Dad faced their own fallout. Neighbors in their quiet Eugene suburb gossiped about how they'd driven me away, their disapproval evident in sidelong glances and hushed conversations. The Norris family's reputation, once polished, was now tarnished by their own actions. I sat at my desk, the city lights twinkling below, and thought about the journey that brought me here. Independence wasn't just about money or a new address. It was about setting boundaries, choosing who I let into my world. I'd learned to trust my instincts, to value my work, to live for myself instead of others' expectations. That lesson was hard-earned, carved out of years of doubt and dismissal. But it was worth it. Every line of code, every sleepless night had built not just an app, but a life I was proud of. I wanted others to know it was possible to break free, to stand firm, to find freedom in being true to who you are. Zachary's message had come with an email from Mom, forwarded by a mutual acquaintance since I'd blocked her. It was a long, guilt-laden note begging me to reconsider, to heal the family. I read it once, then deleted it. I called Brooke and Connor to the office, needing their clarity. "They're trying again," I said, showing them the text. Brooke shook her head. "They don't get it, do they?" Connor leaned back, his voice calm. "You don't owe them anything, Meredith." I nodded, their words grounding me. I typed a final reply to Zachary, my fingers steady. This is my life, not yours. I sent it, then blocked the new number, closing the door for good. As I looked out at Eugene's skyline, a smile spread across my face. I was free not just from them, but for myself.